The crystalline spires of Celestia Prime pierced the purple twilight like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the gentle glow of 3 moons hanging in the imperial sky. Far below, in the labyrinthine depths of the sacred conclave, Cardinal Thessarian moved through corridors that had witnessed 1,000 years of imperial history. His scarlet robes whispered against marble floors as he made his way to the Chamber of Silent Prayers, a room so deep beneath the surface that even the Empire's most advanced surveillance systems could not penetrate its ancient shielding. The Cardinal's weathered face bore the weight of 70 years and the burden of a secret that could reshape the galaxy. "Your Eminence," came a voice from the shadows as Thessarian entered the chamber. Senator Marcus Valdris stepped into the dim light cast by floating prayer candles, his senatorial toga marking him as one of the most powerful legislators in the Intergalactic Empire. "Senator." Thessarian nodded, noting how the man's usually confident demeanor seemed strained. "Are the others coming?" "Senator Lyra Corvin and Senator Dextus Moran will be here shortly," Valdris replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your Eminence, I must ask again, are you certain this is the only way?" Cardinal Thessarian's eyes, steel-gray and sharp as laser cutters, fixed upon the senator. "The Emperor has ruled for 43 years, Marcus. 43 years of increasingly erratic decisions, of paranoia that has seen entire star systems purged for imagined slights. He speaks to the void now, claims he receives visions from some cosmic entity beyond our understanding." The Cardinal moved to a small altar where an ancient text lay open, its pages glowing faintly with embedded photonic script. "The Conclave of Cardinals met in emergency session last month. Half believe the Emperor has been touched by divine madness. The other half fear he has been corrupted by something far worse." "And you, Your Eminence?" Valdris asked. "I believe he has become a threat to the very fabric of our civilization. The recent orders to begin harvesting the life force of entire planets, the construction of those things in the deep space forges, this is not the Emperor we swore to serve." The chamber's ancient doors slid open with a whisper of displaced air, admitting 2 more figures. Senator Lyra Corvin, her silver hair gleaming in the candlelight, moved with the predatory grace that had made her legendary in the Senate's political arena. Behind her, the massive form of Senator Dextus Moran filled the doorway, his augmented physiology a testament to his origins from the heavy-gravity worlds of the Outer Rim. "Forgive our delay," Corvin said, her voice carrying the musical accent of the core worlds. "The security sweeps have intensified. Captain Janus's internal intelligence units are conducting random inspections throughout the governmental district." Cardinal Thessarian felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's cool air. Captain Janus Corwell was a legend in intelligence circles, a woman whose loyalty to the Emperor was matched only by her ruthless efficiency in eliminating his enemies. "Do we have reason to believe our activities have been detected?" Thessarian asked. "Unknown," Moran rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "But 3 senators who have spoken against the Emperor's recent policies have disappeared in the past week. Officially, they're on fact-finding missions to distant sectors." Valdris paled. "You think they've been eliminated?" "I think we're running out of time," Corvin interjected. "Your Eminence, you mentioned that certain elements within the Imperial Guard might be sympathetic to our cause?" Thessarian nodded slowly. "General Korath has served the Empire for 30 years. He remembers when the Emperor was a just ruler, before the madness took hold. He's agreed to neutralize the palace security systems when we give the signal." "And the signal is?" Moran asked. "The Feast of Stellar Alignment, 3 days hence. During the ceremony, when all attention is focused on the Emperor's address to the assembled worlds, we strike. I will be on the sacred platform with him, close enough to—" The Cardinal paused, the weight of his intended action settling upon him like a shroud. "Close enough to end his reign," Corvin finished. "And then? Then the 3 of you, as senior senators, will assume emergency powers and guide the Empire through the transition period. A new Emperor will be chosen, someone rational, someone who can lead us back from the brink of cosmic catastrophe." The 4 conspirators stood in silence for long moments, each lost in contemplation of the momentous step they were about to take. Finally, Thessarian spoke again. "We do this not for power, but for the survival of everything we hold dear. The Emperor's latest project, Project Void's Eye, threatens to tear holes in reality itself. If he succeeds in implementing it, there may be no galaxy left to rule. Then it's decided, Valdris said, his voice steadier now. 3 days hence, we change the course of history. As the conspirators began to file out of the chamber, moving carefully and separately to avoid detection, none of them noticed the almost imperceptible shimmer in the air near the ancient altar, a shimmer that betrayed the presence of a quantum surveillance device so advanced that even the chamber's legendary shielding could not stop it. In a secure facility 50 kilometers away, Captain Janice Corwell watched the recording with cold, calculating eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her uniform bore the distinctive silver insignia of internal intelligence. At 35, she had already earned a reputation as the Emperor's most trusted troubleshooter. "Ma'am," came a voice from behind her. Lieutenant Commander Torres, her second-in-command, approached with a data pad in hand. "We've completed the quantum analysis of the chamber. The surveillance nanites were able to penetrate despite the ancient shielding, but just barely. Audio quality is marginal, but we have enough." Janice replayed the recording, focusing on Cardinal Thessarian's words about Project Void's Eye. The project was classified beyond top secret, even she knew only fragments of its true purpose. But if these conspirators had learned of it, their network ran deeper than she had initially suspected. "Contact General Morrison," she said, never taking her eyes from the holographic display. "Tell him we need to accelerate Operation Cleansing Light. The threat is imminent." "Yes, ma'am." "What about the Emperor? Should we inform him of the plot?" Janice paused, considering. The Emperor's recent behavior had been troubling. His obsession with otherworldly visions and his increasing paranoia had made him difficult to approach, even for someone with her clearance level. But her duty was clear. Schedule a priority meeting with His Imperial Majesty. Use the Omega-7 protocols, maximum security. And Torres? "Yes, ma'am." "Begin discreet surveillance of all participants. I want to know every breath they take, every word they speak, every person they contact between now and the Feast of Stellar Alignment. If there are other conspirators, we'll root them out before we act." As her subordinate hurried away to carry out the orders, Janice remained standing before the holographic display, watching the grainy footage of the 4 conspirators. In her years of service to the Internal Intelligence Division, she had eliminated threats both foreign and domestic, had prevented assassinations and crushed rebellions before they could begin. But this felt different, more complex, more dangerous. Cardinal Thessarian was not some power-hungry opportunist. She had studied his record extensively. He was a man of genuine faith and principle, someone who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. For him to turn against the Emperor suggested that the situation was far more serious than the official reports indicated. But loyalty was not a matter of personal judgment. It was absolute, unwavering, and demanded action regardless of personal feelings or doubts. The Emperor was the Empire, and the Empire was everything. She had sworn an oath, and that oath would be honored. "Computer," she said to the room's AI system, "begin preparation of elimination protocols for Operation Cleansing Light. Authorization code Janus 97 Alpha. Acknowledged, Captain Corwell. Elimination protocols initializing. Estimated time to completion, 47 hours, 32 minutes. Janice nodded grimly. In less than 2 days she would have everything she needed to end the threat to the Emperor, and to ensure that the conspiracy died with its participants. The only question now was whether she could uncover the full extent of the plot before the Feast of Stellar Alignment began. The Imperial Palace of Celestia Prime stood as a monument to the power and glory of a 1,000-year dynasty. Its walls, constructed from rare crystals mined from the hearts of dying stars, seemed to pulse with an inner light that shifted colors with the Emperor's moods. Today, those walls glowed a deep, troubled red. Emperor Maximilian IX sat alone in his private chambers, surrounded by holographic displays showing the vast expanse of his domain. 10,000 star systems, 1 trillion loyal subjects, fleets that could reduce planets to cosmic dust, all of it his to command. Yet he felt more isolated and vulnerable than ever before. The visions had started 3 months ago. At first, he had dismissed them as stress-induced hallucinations, a side effect of the neural enhancement treatments he received to manage the enormous flow of information required to govern an intergalactic empire. But they had grown stronger, more vivid, more insistent. "My lord," came a voice from behind him. The Emperor turned to see his personal aide, a pale young man named Corbin who had served him faithfully for 5 years. "Captain Corwell has requested an emergency audience. She claims to have information of vital importance to your security." The Emperor waved a hand dismissively. "Not now, Corbin. I need to meditate on the visions. My lord, with respect, Captain Corwell rarely requests emergency audiences. Perhaps—" "I said not now!" The Emperor's voice cracked like a whip, and the crystalline walls pulsed with angry red light. Corbin stepped back, bowing deeply. "Of course, my lord. I shall inform the captain that you will see her at your convenience." As the aide hurried away, Emperor Maximilian returned his attention to the star charts floating before him. But instead of seeing star systems and trade routes, he saw something else entirely: vast, tentacled shapes moving through the spaces between dimensions, entities of such cosmic scale that entire galaxies were mere motes in their presence. The voice that had been haunting his dreams spoke again, not heard but felt directly in his consciousness. "The barriers weaken, mortal Emperor. Soon we shall reclaim what was always ours. Your reality is but a thin shell protecting the true depths of existence." "What do you want from me?" the Emperor whispered, his hands trembling as he gripped the arms of his throne. "Continue the great work. The devices you construct with Project Voids I will serve our purposes well. Each portal you tear in the fabric of space brings us closer to your realm." Emperor Maximilian's blood ran cold. Project Voids I was his greatest secret, a research initiative that only a handful of individuals knew about. It had grown from his desire to peer beyond the known dimensions, to seek knowledge and power that would ensure the Empire's eternal dominance. But if these entities, whatever they were, saw the project as serving their purposes— "Who are you?" he demanded. "What are you?" "We are the Old Ones, the first dynasty that ruled when your universe was young. We were cast into the spaces between realities eons ago, but we have not forgotten. We have been patient, waiting for a mortal with sufficient ambition and power to unknowingly aid our return." The Emperor rose from his throne, pacing to the vast window that looked out over the imperial city. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness, each representing thousands of lives that depended on his protection and guidance. The weight of that responsibility had shaped every decision of his 43-year reign. "And if I refuse to continue the project?" "You will not refuse. You cannot refuse. You have already seen what awaits those who displease us." Unbidden, images flashed through the Emperor's mind: the 3 senators who had recently disappeared, not eliminated by Captain Corwell's operatives as he had ordered, but taken by something far worse. He had watched through dimensional viewing equipment as they were pulled screaming into spaces that existed outside normal reality, their bodies twisted and transformed into shapes that violated every law of physics. "The feast of stellar alignment approaches," the voice continued. "It would be unfortunate if certain elements within your government attempted to interfere with our arrangement. We suggest taking preemptive action." The Emperor's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside his chambers. Captain Corwell was not easily deterred when she believed his safety was at stake. Part of him, the part that remembered being a just and rational ruler, wanted to see her, to listen to whatever intelligence she had uncovered. But the larger part, the part that had been touched by cosmic forces beyond human understanding, knew that her information would only complicate matters. If she had discovered the conspiracy against him, if she knew about the senators and the cardinal, then she might also uncover the truth about Project Void's Eye. And that could not be allowed. "Corbin!" he called. His aide appeared instantly, as if he had been waiting just outside the door. "Yes, my lord?" "Send word to Captain Corwell that I will see her tomorrow, after the feast preparations are complete. For now, I want no interruptions." "Yes, my lord." "Shall I inform her of the reason for the delay?" Tell her I am consulting with advisors on matters of cosmic importance. She will understand. As Corbin bowed and departed, Emperor Maximilian returned to his star charts. But now he was not studying his empire. He was studying the gaps between star systems, the dark spaces where ancient entities waited with infinite patience for their moment of return. 3 days. In 3 days, during the ceremony that celebrated the Empire's greatest astronomical alignment in 1,000 years, he would activate the final phase of Project Void's Eye. The barriers between dimensions would be permanently weakened, creating stable pathways for the Old Ones to return to this reality. And if certain troublesome individuals had to be eliminated to ensure the project's success, well, that was the price of empire. He had made harder choices in his reign, though none that would have consequences reaching beyond the boundaries of mortal existence. In her office 50 kilometers away, Captain Janice Corwell stared at the message from the Imperial Palace with growing unease. In 5 years of serving the Emperor's security interests, he had never delayed an emergency meeting. Something was very wrong, something beyond the Cardinal's conspiracy. Ma'am, Lieutenant Commander Torres entered with another data pad. We've completed the background analysis on the 4 conspirators. There's something you need to see. Janice took the pad and scrolled through the intelligence reports. What she saw made her blood run cold. Each of the 4 conspirators had, over the past 6 months, attempted to access classified information about Project Void's Eye. Each had been denied due to insufficient clearance, but the pattern was unmistakable. They know, she said quietly. Somehow, they know about the project. Ma'am, if I may ask, what exactly is Project Void's Eye? The file is classified beyond my level. Janice was quiet for a long moment, weighing security protocols against operational necessity. It's a dimensional research project, Torres. The Emperor believes it will give us unprecedented access to energy sources and strategic advantages. But if these conspirators have learned about it... She didn't finish the sentence. If the Cardinal and his allies knew about Project Void's Eye, their motivation for eliminating the Emperor went far beyond concerns about erratic behavior or political paranoia. They might know something about the project that she didn't, something that painted the Emperor's actions in a very different light. Torres, I want you to dig deeper into the classified archives. Use my personal authorization codes. Find out everything you can about Project Void's Eye, its true purpose, its risks, its current status. We may be dealing with something much larger than a simple palace coup. Yes, ma'am. And the operation against the conspirators? Continues as planned? But I want all contingencies prepared. If this situation becomes more complex than anticipated, we need to be ready to adapt our approach. As Torres hurried away to begin his investigation, Janice stood alone in her office, staring out at the Imperial city below. Somewhere in those gleaming towers, forces were moving that could reshape the very nature of reality. And she was caught in the middle, sworn to protect an emperor who might be orchestrating the Empire's destruction, while preparing to eliminate conspirators who might be trying to save it. For the first time in her career, Captain Janice Corwell found herself questioning not just her orders, but the fundamental nature of the loyalty she had pledged to serve. The great library of Celestia Prime had stood for 800 years, its bioorganic architecture adapting and growing as the Empire's knowledge expanded. Within its living walls, billions of data crystals stored the accumulated wisdom of 10,000 worlds, accessible to those with proper clearance and genuine need. Cardinal Thessarian moved through the library's restricted section with the purposeful stride of a man carrying the weight of destiny. His scarlet robes marked him as one of the few individuals with unrestricted access to even the most dangerous knowledge repositories. Today, he sought information that could either damn his soul or save his civilization. Archive Terminal 7 activate, he commanded as he approached a crystalline console that hummed with barely contained energy. Authorization, Cardinal Thessarian, Conclave of Sacred Truth, Priority Omega. Authorization confirmed, Your Eminence. The terminal responded in a melodious artificial voice. What knowledge do you seek? Historical files on dimensional research, classification level void black and above. Cross-reference with any mentions of entities calling themselves the Old Ones, the First Dynasty, or similar appellations. The terminal's crystalline structure began to glow as massive databases were searched and analyzed. Thessarian waited with growing impatience, knowing that his time in the restricted section was monitored and logged. He could not afford to linger too long without attracting unwanted attention. Search complete, Your Eminence. I have located 47 relevant documents spanning the past 2,000 years. However, I must warn you that 38 of these files are sealed under the cosmic hazard protocols established by the first Emperor himself. Display them all, Thessarian commanded. My clearance should be sufficient. The air above the terminal shimmered, and dozens of holographic documents materialized, their contents written in the flowing script of High Imperial. Thessarian began reading rapidly, his enhanced neural processing allowing him to absorb information at superhuman speed. What he discovered chilled him to his very core. The Old Ones were not mythology or primitive superstition. They were entities that had ruled this galaxy, indeed, this entire dimensional space, billions of years before the first human had looked up at the stars. According to the ancient records, they possessed technology and abilities that bordered on the divine, capable of manipulating reality itself at the quantum level. But they had not been invincible. Some cosmic catastrophe, the records were unclear on the details, had banished them from normal spacetime, trapping them in the dimensional gaps between realities. There they had waited, patient and implacable, for an opportunity to return. Sacred stars preserve us, Thessarian whispered as he read an account from the early days of the Empire. The first Emperor had encountered evidence of the Old Ones during his initial conquests, had learned of their exile and the conditions that might allow their return. In his wisdom, he had established protocols to prevent any research that might weaken the barriers keeping them trapped. Those protocols had been gradually relaxed over the centuries as the threat faded from institutional memory. Each subsequent emperor had regarded the restrictions as antiquated superstitions, obstacles to scientific progress and imperial expansion. Emperor Maximilian IX had eliminated them entirely 3 years ago. Display files related to Project Void's Eye, Thessarian commanded, his voice tight with dread. I regret to inform you, Your Eminence, that Project Void's Eye files are classified beyond your current authorization level. Access requires direct Imperial approval. Thessarian closed his eyes, feeling the weight of terrible knowledge settling upon his shoulders. He didn't need to see the classified files to understand what was happening. The Emperor, in his pursuit of power and knowledge, had begun the very research that the first Emperor had forbidden. And somehow, the Old Ones had made contact with him, guiding his efforts to serve their own malevolent purposes. Archive Terminal 7. Compile all available information on dimensional barrier weakening and quantum reality manipulation. Include theoretical papers on the risks of uncontrolled dimensional breaches. As the terminal processed his request, Thessarian's personal communication device chimed softly. The message was from Senator Valdris, brief and coded. The sunset grows more beautiful each day. Perhaps we should gather to watch it together soon. Translation. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and the other conspirators wanted to meet earlier than planned. Thessarian glanced around the library's restricted section, noting the subtle surveillance devices hidden among the bioorganic architecture. They couldn't meet in the sacred conclave again. Captain Corwell's operatives would be monitoring that location now. He sent a coded reply. The morning star rises in 3 days. Let us prepare our instruments to observe its glory. The Feast of Stellar Alignment was still their target date, but they would need to accelerate their other preparations. If his suspicions about Project Void's Eye were correct, they might be the only thing standing between the Empire and cosmic catastrophe. Compilation complete, Your Eminence, the terminal announced. The files detail significant risks associated with dimensional manipulation, including the theoretical possibility of creating permanent rifts in spacetime that could allow extra-dimensional entities to enter our reality. Thessarian downloaded the data to his personal storage device, then erased all traces of his search from the terminal's activity logs, a privilege of his high clearance level. As he prepared to leave the library, one final document caught his attention, a personal journal entry from the first Emperor, classified so highly that even he shouldn't have been able to access it. The entry was brief but devastating. Year 47 of my reign. The visions grow stronger daily. The things that call themselves the Old Ones whisper of power beyond imagination, of technologies that could ensure the Empire's dominance for all eternity. But I have seen what lies beyond the barriers they wish me to breach. I have seen the fate that awaits our reality if they return. Therefore, I seal this knowledge away, pray that my successors will have the wisdom to leave it buried, and trust in the strength of dimensional barriers to protect us from our own ambition. May the stars forgive me for the temptation I have resisted. The first emperor had faced the same choice that now confronted Maximilian IX, and had chosen the path of wisdom rather than power. His current successor had made the opposite choice, and the consequences would soon reshape the galaxy. Thessarian left the library with a heavy heart and a clear purpose. The conspiracy against the emperor was no longer about removing an unstable ruler. It was about preventing the return of entities that could end human civilization entirely. The moral calculus was clear: one life, even an imperial life, weighed against the survival of trillions. But as he made his way through the governmental district toward his next clandestine meeting, Thessarian couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. If the Emperor had been in contact with the Old Ones for months, if Project Void's Eye was nearing completion, then perhaps the barriers were already too weakened to prevent catastrophe. In that case, their assassination attempt might accomplish nothing more than hastening the Empire's doom. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Internal Intelligence Facility, Lieutenant Commander Torres was making discoveries of his own. Using Captain Corwell's authorization codes, he had penetrated the classified archives surrounding Project Void's Eye and found information that made him question everything he thought he knew about the Empire's leadership. "Captain," he said as Janice entered the secure briefing room, "you need to see this immediately." The holographic display showed technical schematics of devices that seemed to blend advanced physics with designs that hurt to look at directly, geometries that suggested spaces folding in on themselves in ways that violated normal reality. "What am I looking at, Torres?" "Project Void's Eye, ma'am. According to these files, it's not just dimensional research, it's an active attempt to create permanent portals between our reality and what the scientists call adjacent dimensional spaces. The energy requirements are enormous, which is why the project has been secretly draining power from 3 entire star systems." Janice studied the schematics with growing horror. "What's the stated purpose of the project?" "Access to unlimited energy sources and strategic advantages over potential extragalactic threats." "But ma'am, there are warning flags throughout these files. Multiple scientists have been removed from the project after raising concerns about the risks. And there are references to consultation with entities possessing superior dimensional knowledge." "Entities?" "Unknown, ma'am. But several project personnel have reported experiencing shared visions and receiving guidance from sources they describe as cosmic in scope. The psychological evaluation reports suggest mass hallucination or contact with external intelligence." Janice felt the foundations of her worldview shifting beneath her feet. If the Emperor was being influenced by unknown entities, if Project Void's Eye represented a threat to reality itself, then the Cardinal's conspiracy might not be treason at all. It might be the only rational response to an impossible situation. "Torres, I want you to compile a complete risk assessment based on these files. Include all worst-case scenarios, no matter how outlandish they might seem. And do it quickly. We have less than 48 hours before the Feast of Stellar Alignment." "Yes, ma'am." "But Captain, what are we going to do with this information?" "Our mission is to protect the Emperor and eliminate the conspiracy against him." Janice was quiet for a long moment, staring at the impossible geometries displayed on the holographic projector. Finally, she spoke with the voice of someone who had just realized that the universe was far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined. "We're going to do our duty, Torres. But first, we need to figure out exactly what our duty requires in a situation like this." Captain Janice Corwell stood alone in her private quarters aboard the IS Vigilance, a state-of-the-art intelligence vessel that served as Internal Intelligence's mobile command center. Through the reinforced transparency viewports, she could see the sprawling cityscape of Celestia Prime laid out below like a circuit board of light and shadow. The risk assessment Torres had compiled lay before her on a secure display tablet, and its conclusions were more terrifying than any threat she had faced in 15 years of intelligence work. According to the analysis, Project Void's Eye represented an existential threat not just to the Empire, but to the fundamental structure of reality itself. The mathematics were unforgiving. Each dimensional breach created by the project would weaken the barriers between realities exponentially. By the calculations of the project's own scientists, calculations that had been buried in classified appendices, there was a 73% probability that full activation of the system would result in irreversible dimensional collapse, allowing entities from adjacent realities to enter their space-time continuum permanently. "Ma'am," Torres' voice came through the secure comm system. "I have that additional intelligence you requested on the old ones. Bring it to my quarters. And Torres, ensure we're not monitored. Use the Omega encryption protocols." When Torres arrived with a data cube containing the fruits of his deep archive research, his usually composed demeanor had cracked. The man looked like he had seen the face of cosmic horror, which, Janice realized, he probably had. "Captain, what I found in the deepest archives, it changes everything. The old ones aren't just theoretical entities or ancient mythology. They're real, they're patient, and they've been influencing galactic events for millennia." Torres activated the data cube, and holographic documents materialized in the air between them. Records from a dozen different civilizations across galactic history, all telling variations of the same story, periods of rapid technological advancement followed by sudden, inexplicable collapse, entire species vanishing overnight, dimensional anomalies that left scars in space-time itself. Every major galactic civilization for the past 2 million years has eventually encountered the old ones, Torres explained, his voice tight with suppressed fear. "The pattern is always the same. They make contact with the civilization's leaders, promise unlimited power and knowledge, guide them toward dimensional research projects. And then the civilizations disappear." Janice finished, understanding the implications. "We're not the first empire to be manipulated in this way." "No, ma'am. But we might be the last, because we've developed technology advanced enough to actually succeed where others failed. Previous civilizations never had the computational power to properly weaken the dimensional barriers. We do." Janice absorbed this information, feeling the weight of impossible decisions settling upon her shoulders. As an intelligence officer, her duty was to protect the Empire from all threats, foreign and domestic. But what happened when the greatest threat came from the Empire's own leader, acting under the influence of entities that predated human civilization? "Torres, I want you to run a tactical analysis. If we were to proceed with Operation Cleansing Light as originally planned, eliminating the Cardinal and his co-conspirators, what would be the likely outcome?" Torres worked at his portable terminal for several minutes before responding. "If the conspirators are eliminated and the Emperor proceeds with Project Void's Eye, there's a 94% probability of dimensional catastrophe within 72 hours of the Feast of Stellar Alignment. The Emperor's psychological profile suggests he's completely committed to the project and unlikely to be deterred by conventional means. And if we were to reconsider our mission parameters?" "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking." Janice stood and moved to the viewport, looking out at the city where millions of beings lived their lives in blissful ignorance of the cosmic forces gathering around them. "I'm asking what happens if we don't eliminate the conspirators. What happens if we let them proceed with their plan to assassinate the Emperor?" Torres was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a man confronting the unthinkable. "According to the tactical projections, the Cardinal's plan has a 67% probability of success. If Emperor Maximilian IX were eliminated before the Feast of Stellar Alignment, Project Void's Eye would be suspended pending investigation by the new government. The dimensional barriers would remain intact. The Empire would survive." "Yes, ma'am. The Empire would survive." Janice turned back to face her subordinate, seeing her own moral struggle reflected in his eyes. They were intelligence officers, trained to follow orders and maintain the chain of command regardless of personal feelings. But they were also sentient beings with a responsibility to protect innocent life on the largest possible scale. Torres, what I'm about to say doesn't leave this room. If we proceed with our original mission, we become complicit in the potential extinction of all life in this galaxy. If we fail to proceed, we commit treason against our oaths and our Emperor. Ma'am, what are you proposing? I'm not proposing anything yet. But I want you to prepare contingency plans for both scenarios. If we maintain our original mission, I want flawless execution, complete elimination of all conspirators with no possibility of the plan proceeding. If we modify our approach, I want to ensure that any intervention on our part appears accidental or coincidental. Torres nodded slowly, understanding the delicate balance she was attempting to maintain. How long do we have to decide? The Feast of Stellar Alignment begins in 36 hours. The Cardinal plans to act during the Emperor's address to the assembled systems. We need to make our choice by tomorrow evening at the latest. As Torres gathered his materials and prepared to leave, Janice called out to him one final time. Commander, in your analysis of the historical records, did any of the previous civilizations find a way to resist the Old One's influence? Any examples of successful opposition? Torres paused at the door, consulting his notes. There are fragmentary records of a species called the Vanguard Collective that seemed to recognize the threat early and took drastic action to prevent their leaders from proceeding with dimensional research. But the records are incomplete. We don't know what specific measures they took or whether they ultimately succeeded. Find out everything you can about the Vanguard Collective. If there's precedent for successfully opposing the Old Ones, I want to know about it. Alone again in her quarters, Janice accessed her personal files and pulled up her service record. 15 years of faithful service, dozens of successful operations, commendations from 3 different emperors. She had built her entire identity around the concept of unwavering loyalty to the imperial throne. But loyalty to an institution was supposed to serve a higher purpose, the protection and advancement of civilization itself. If the emperor had been compromised by forces antithetical to that purpose, then where did her true loyalty lie? She activated her personal communication device and composed a carefully worded message to General Morrison, the commanding officer of her division. Sir, Operation Cleansing Light requires additional tactical assessment before implementation. Request permission to delay execution pending completion of threat analysis. Will report findings within 24 hours. The response came back within minutes. Permission granted. Ensure operation proceeds before the Feast of Stellar Alignment. The Emperor has personally inquired about our progress and expects results. Janice stared at the message, noting its implications. The Emperor wasn't just aware of the conspiracy against him, he was actively monitoring internal intelligence's efforts to eliminate the threat. That suggested a level of paranoia and control that went beyond normal security concerns. Or perhaps it suggested that the Old Ones were using him to ensure their plan proceeded without interference. She deleted the message and activated the ship's secure communication system. This is Captain Corwell to all senior staff. Report to the main briefing room in 1 hour for emergency tactical planning. Authorization level Omega Black. It was time to present her officers with the truth about their situation and let them help decide the fate of the galaxy. Because whatever choice they made in the next 24 hours would echo across the cosmos for eons to come. In the depths of space, light years from the nearest star, something vast and ancient stirred in the dimensional voids between realities. The Old Ones could sense the growing tension on Celestia Prime, could feel the fragile threads of their carefully constructed plan beginning to fray. Soon, very soon, they would need to take more direct action to ensure their return to the realm of matter and energy. The universe had belonged to them once, before the younger races had emerged to pollute reality with their crude concepts of morality and free will. It would belong to them again, and this time, they would ensure that no upstart species could challenge their dominion. The Feast of Stellar Alignment would mark the beginning of a new age, an age of cosmic order under the guidance of beings who had mastered the fundamental forces of existence itself. The tiny creatures that had temporarily inherited the galaxy would serve their new masters well, or they would be consumed in the transition to a higher order of reality. Either outcome was acceptable to entities for whom time was measured in geological epochs and space in dimensions beyond mortal comprehension. The main briefing room aboard the IS Vigilance hummed with tension as Captain Janice Corwell's senior staff assembled for what she had called the most important tactical planning session of their careers. The ship's artificial gravity generators seemed to strain under the weight of the decisions that would be made in the next few hours. Lieutenant Commander Torres took his seat at the holographic conference table, followed by Major Sarah Chin, the ship's tactical operations specialist, and Commander David Reeves, head of strategic analysis. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenopsychologist and expert on non-human intelligence, completed the senior staff roster. "Ladies and gentlemen," Janice began, her voice carrying the authority of 15 years in intelligence work. "What I'm about to share with you is classified beyond any security level you've previously encountered. The information we've uncovered regarding our current operation has implications that extend far beyond the normal scope of internal intelligence activities." She activated the room's holographic display system, and the air above the conference table filled with documents, star charts, and technical schematics that painted a picture of cosmic horror beyond imagination. "Our original mission was to eliminate a conspiracy against Emperor Maximilian IX led by Cardinal Thessarian and 3 senators. However, our investigation has revealed that this conspiracy may be the only thing standing between the Empire and total annihilation." Major Chen leaned forward, her combat-hardened features etched with concentration. "Captain, are you suggesting that the conspirators are justified in their planned assassination? I'm suggesting that the situation is far more complex than we initially understood. Torres, present your findings on Project Void's Eye." For the next 30 minutes, Torres laid out the technical details of the Emperor's dimensional research project, the historical pattern of civilizations falling to the Old One's influence, and the mathematical projections indicating near-certain catastrophe if the project proceeded to completion. Dr. Vasquez was the first to break the stunned silence that followed. "Captain, if this analysis is correct, we're dealing with entities that operate on a scale of intelligence and power that makes them essentially godlike from our perspective. The psychological manipulation they're capable of would be virtually undetectable to the subject." "You're saying the Emperor may not even realize he's been compromised?" Commander Reeves asked. "I'm saying that from his perspective, he may genuinely believe he's acting in the Empire's best interests. The Old Ones have had millions of years to perfect their techniques of manipulation. They would know exactly how to present their agenda in terms that appeal to his existing psychological motivations." Major Chen studied the tactical projections with a professional eye. "Captain, what are our options here? As I see it, we have 3 basic courses of action: proceed with the original mission and eliminate the conspiracy, abort the mission and allow the assassination to proceed, or attempt some form of intervention that neutralizes both threats." "Explain the third option," Janice requested. "We eliminate the conspirators as ordered, but also find a way to sabotage Project Void's Eye before it can be activated. That preserves the chain of command while preventing the dimensional catastrophe." Torres shook his head. "Major, the project has multiple redundant systems and failsafes scattered across several star systems. Even if we could gain access to the primary control systems, which would require clearance levels we don't possess, the Old Ones would simply guide the Emperor to rebuild what we destroyed. The timeline might be delayed, but the ultimate outcome would remain the same." Commander Reeves had been running calculations on his personal terminal. "There's another factor to consider. If we allow the assassination to proceed, there's no guarantee that the new government would have the knowledge or capability to permanently shut down Project Void's Eye. The dimensional breaches already created may have progressed beyond the point of reversibility." Dr. Vasquez pulled up a psychological analysis chart. "Based on my study of the Emperor's behavior patterns over the past 6 months, I believe his interaction with the Old Ones has progressed to the point where he may be psychologically incapable of abandoning the project. The level of mental conditioning would be extraordinary." "Doctor," Janice said carefully, "in your professional opinion, is there any way to break that conditioning and restore the Emperor's original personality?" "Theoretically, yes. But it would require direct neural intervention using techniques that are barely understood and extremely dangerous. The success rate would be minimal, and even a successful procedure might result in complete psychological breakdown. The room fell silent as each officer contemplated the impossible choices before them. Janice looked around the table at faces that reflected her own inner turmoil, the conflict between duty and conscience, between following orders and serving the greater good. "I want each of you to understand," she said finally, "that whatever decision we make here will define not only our careers but our moral standing for the rest of our lives. If we follow our original orders and eliminate the conspiracy, we become complicit in potential genocide on a galactic scale. If we allow the assassination to proceed, we commit treason against our sworn oaths." Major Chun was the first to speak. "Captain, I've served in 3 different military branches and participated in operations that required difficult moral calculations. But I've never faced a situation where following orders might result in the extinction of all intelligent life in the galaxy. I can't be party to that outcome, regardless of the personal consequences." Commander Reeves nodded slowly. "I agree with the Major. Our oath is to serve and protect the Empire, but the Empire includes trillions of innocent beings who have no knowledge of the threat they face. If we can prevent their annihilation by failing to act, then that's what duty requires." Dr. Vasquez added her support. "From a psychological standpoint, the Emperor is no longer the person we swore to serve. He's been transformed into an instrument of alien entities with agendas antithetical to human survival. Protecting him would be protecting our enemies." Torres was the last to speak, and his voice carried the weight of the terrible knowledge he had uncovered. "Captain, I've spent the last 48 hours studying the historical records of civilizations that faced this same choice. Every time they prioritized loyalty to compromised leaders over the survival of their people, the result was total extinction. We may be the last intelligence capable of recognizing the threat and taking action to prevent it." Janice felt the burden of command settling on her shoulders like a mountain of responsibility. In 15 years of service, she had never faced a decision that would have consequences reaching beyond her own lifetime. Now she was being asked to choose between loyalty and survival, between honor and wisdom. "Very well," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to authorize. "We will modify Operation Cleansing Light. Our new mission parameters are as follows. We will take no action to prevent the assassination attempt during the Feast of Stellar Alignment. However, we will maintain surveillance and be prepared to intervene if the conspiracy appears likely to fail." "Captain," Torres asked, "what about our reports to General Morrison and the Emperor? We will report that the conspiracy has been neutralized, but that the timing of our intervention prevented us from capturing the conspirators alive. The accidental deaths of the principals during our arrest attempt will explain why the threat no longer exists." Major Chin raised a tactical concern. "Ma'am, there's a significant risk that the Cardinal's plan will fail regardless of our intervention. Palace security is extensive, and even without our interference, the odds of a successful assassination are marginal. Which is why we need to be prepared to ensure the operation succeeds if necessary. Torres, I want you to compile detailed intelligence on the security arrangements for the Feast of Stellar Alignment. Identify any vulnerabilities that might be, accidentally, exploited." As the meeting broke up and her officers departed to begin preparations for their modified mission, Janice remained alone in the briefing room, staring at the holographic display showing the vast expanse of the Empire they were sworn to protect. In 18 hours, the Feast of Stellar Alignment would begin with the traditional address by the Emperor to representatives from all 10,000 systems. Cardinal Thessarian would be on the platform with him, close enough to complete his mission if everything went according to plan. But if the Cardinal failed, if palace security proved too robust or the Emperor's paranoia too complete, then Captain Janice Corwell and her team would be forced to choose between their oaths and their consciences one final time. She activated her personal communication device and composed a message to be delivered only in the event of her death. "To whom it may concern, the actions taken by my team and myself during the Feast of Stellar Alignment were undertaken to protect the Empire from threats beyond normal comprehension. We acted not in betrayal of our oaths, but in service to the highest principles those oaths represent. May history judge us more kindly than we judge ourselves." Outside the ship's viewports, the lights of Celestia Prime continued to twinkle in the darkness, unaware that their fate would be decided by a handful of individuals struggling with the weight of impossible choices. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to discover whether wisdom or loyalty would triumph in the crucible of cosmic decision.